The alarms had been screaming for 3 hours straight. Park Jisoo pressed her hands against her ears, but the sound cut through anyway. Red emergency lights painted everything in blood colors. The station shook again, and somewhere far away, metal screamed as it tore apart. She was not supposed to be here. She was a scientist who studied animals, not a soldier. Her job was simple and quiet. She watched how Earth creatures lived in space. She wrote reports. She fed her cat. That was all. But now Station Meridian was dying, and Jisoo was trapped inside it. She crawled across the floor of the biodome, keeping low. The biodome was her workplace, a large room filled with plants and small animals from Earth. It was meant to feel like home. Now it felt like a cage. Through the thick glass windows, she could see the battle outside. Coalition soldiers fired their weapons at the enemy. Bright blue plasma bolts lit up the darkness. Orange ion beams cut through the air. Nothing worked. The Void Swarm did not care about weapons. Jisoo had read about them in old files. Everyone had. The Void Swarm was ancient, older than most species in the galaxy. They were not solid creatures. They looked like living oil, like shadows that moved on their own. They could change shape. They could squeeze through tiny holes. And worst of all, they learned. Every weapon the Coalition used, the Swarm adapted to within seconds. Plasma burned them at first. Then it did not. Ion beams cut them apart at first. Then they did not. The Swarm absorbed everything, learned everything, and became immune to everything. No one had ever killed one. Not in 10,000 years of war. Another explosion rocked the station. Jisoo fell against a row of plant containers. Dirt spilled across her uniform. She pushed herself up and kept moving toward the back of the biodome. 3 soldiers were already there, hiding behind a wall of equipment. She recognized their faces. She had eaten lunch with them sometimes in the cafeteria. Corporal Kim Do-hyun was the oldest, maybe 30 years old. He had a kind face and a bad wound on his leg. Blood soaked through the bandage wrapped around his thigh. He was pale and sweating. Privately, Yuna was younger, barely 20. She held a medical kit in one hand and a pistol in the other. Her eyes were wide and scared, but her hands were steady. A cut on her forehead dripped blood down her cheek. Specialist Choi Minho was the biggest of them. He carried a plasma rifle that looked almost empty. His uniform was torn and burned in several places. He watched the door with the look of a man who expected to die. Jisoo dropped down beside them. Her heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her throat. Yuna looked at her. "You should not be here. The hallways are gone," Jisoo said. Swarm broke through Deck 7. This was the only safe room left. Minho laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Safe, right?" Do-hyun coughed. His face was getting paler. "How many soldiers are left out there?" No one answered. They all knew. The shooting outside was getting quieter. Fewer weapons firing. Fewer people alive to fire them. Jisoo looked around the biodome. Her eyes found the small carrier cage in the corner. Inside, a pair of orange eyes stared back at her. Biscuit. He was just a cat. A small orange tabby with white paws and a tournier from a fight he had gotten into years ago on Earth. The Coalition had allowed pets on long-term stations as part of a mental health program. Studies showed that humans worked better when they had animals nearby. It made them feel less alone in the cold emptiness of space. Jisoo had brought Biscuit with her 2 years ago. He was lazy and demanding, and sometimes knocked things off her desk for no reason. She loved him completely. Now she wondered if she had brought him here to die. The lights flickered. The alarm stopped suddenly, which was somehow worse than the noise. In the silence, Jisoo could hear something else. A wet sliding sound, like meat being dragged across metal. Man Ho raised his rifle. "They are coming." The door to the biodome was thick and strong. It was designed to survive fires and explosions and loss of air pressure. It was not designed for this. A black tendril pushed through the seal around the door. It moved like a snake made of oil. It did not break the door. It simply squeezed through the tiny gap between the door and the wall, a gap no wider than a fingernail. More tendrils followed. They spread across the door like veins, like roots, like something alive and hungry. Minho fired. The plasma bolt hit the massive darkness and sank into it like a stone dropping into water. For a moment, the swarm glowed blue from the inside. Then the glow faded. The swarm kept coming. Yuna fired her pistol. Same result. The bullets disappeared into the black mass without effect. Do-hyun tried to stand, tried to raise his own weapon, but his wounded leg gave out. He fell back down with a grunt of pain. Jisoo had no weapon. She was a scientist. She watched the darkness spread across the door and knew that nothing could stop it. This was how it ended. Not with a battle, but with a slow, inevitable consumption. The swarm was not just killing them. It was eating the station, absorbing it. Every piece of metal, every wire, every person who fell became part of it. That was why it could not be stopped. It did not want to destroy. It wanted to become. The door began to melt. Not from heat, but from the swarm simply taking it apart, molecule by molecule. A hole appeared in the center, small at first, then growing. Through the hole, Jisoo saw nothing but darkness. Living darkness that watched her with 1,000 invisible eyes. She backed away until she hit the wall. Nowhere else to go. Nowhere to run. Then she heard a sound behind her. A low growl. She turned. The carrier cage was open. She did not remember opening it, but it was open now, and Biscuit was standing in front of it. His fur stood straight up, making him look twice his normal size. His ears were flat against his head. His lips pulled back to show small white teeth. And from his throat came a sound that Jisoo had never heard him make before. It was not a meow. It was not a hiss. It was something older. Something from deep inside him, from a place that remembered when his ancestors hunted in tall grass and feared nothing. The sound filled the room, and the void swarm, the ancient enemy that had consumed worlds and defeated every weapon in the galaxy, stopped moving. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The swarm hung in the doorway like a frozen wave. Its tendrils, which had been spreading across the walls just seconds ago, were now completely still. The darkness seemed to be watching the small orange cat with something that might have been confusion. Jisoo stared at Biscuit. The cat had not moved from his spot near the carrier cage. His body was low to the ground in a hunter's crouch. Every muscle was tight. His eyes were locked on the swarm, and those eyes had changed. The pupils were huge now, black circles that swallowed nearly all the orange color around them. She had seen cats look like this before. It happened when they spotted a bird through a window, or when they found a mouse hiding under furniture. It was the look of a predator that had found prey, but this was insane. Biscuit was a house cat. He weighed maybe 7 kilograms. The void swarm was a monster that had destroyed entire planets. The comparison was like an ant facing a tsunami. Yet the swarm did not move. Yuna whispered from behind her medical kit. "What is happening? Why did it stop?" Minho kept his rifle up, though they all knew it was useless. "Maybe it is studying us. Learning our weaknesses." No. Do-hyun's voice was weak from blood loss, but his eyes were sharp. He was looking at the cat. It stopped when the animal made that sound. "Look at it. It is focused on the cat." He was right. The swarm had spread across nearly half the room, but every tendril, every piece of that living darkness, was pointing toward Biscuit. Not toward the soldiers. Not toward their weapons. Toward a small pet that liked to sleep in sunny spots and chase toys, made of feathers. Jisu's scientific mind began to work despite her fear. She had spent her whole career studying how Earth animals adapted to space. She knew things about biology that most people never thought about. And now, watching the standoff between her cat and an ancient cosmic horror, a theory began to form in her head. The void swarm survived by adaptation. That was its greatest power. It encountered a weapon, analyzed how the weapon worked, and then changed itself to become immune. Plasma rifles worked by superheating gas to create a burning projectile. The swarm learned to absorb and redirect heat. Ion beams worked by disrupting molecular bonds. The swarm learned to rebuild its molecules faster than they could be broken. Every weapon was based on science. Every weapon had a pattern. And the swarm could learn patterns. The biscuit was not a weapon. Biscuit was an animal. A predator. His claws and teeth were not tools that someone had designed and built. They were parts of him, grown from his own DNA, shaped by millions of years of evolution on a planet where everything either killed or was killed. There was no science to analyze, no pattern to learn. There was only instinct, ancient and pure. The swarm had never encountered anything like this. In 10,000 years of war against species that built machines and weapons, it had never faced something that was simply born dangerous. Biscuit growled again. The sound was deeper this time, rolling through the room like distant thunder. One of the swarm's tendrils moved. It stretched toward the cat, slow and careful. Testing. Biscuit's paw lashed out. The movement was so fast that Jisu almost missed it. One moment the cat was still. The next moment, 5 small claws had raked across the tendril's surface that the swarm pulled back. Where the claws had touched, the darkness looked different. Damaged. Small lines of something that might have been light leaked from the wounds. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the swarm made a sound that it was not a scream. It was not a roar. It was something that Jisu felt more than heard, a vibration in her chest and behind her eyes. It was the sound of something that had never felt pain suddenly discovering what pain meant. Yuna grabbed Jisu's arm. Did the cat just hurt it? I think so. Jisu could not believe what she was seeing. I think he actually hurt it. Minho lowered his rifle slightly. That is impossible. We hit it with plasma fire. We hit it with ion beams. Nothing worked. Your weapons are technology, Jisu said. The theory was becoming clearer now. They are machines built to cause damage in specific ways. The swarm can understand machines. It can adapt to them. She pointed at Biscuit. But he is not a machine. He is biology. Pure, simple, natural biology. His claws are not designed to hurt things. They just do. There is no pattern to learn because there is no pattern. There is only what he is. The swarm gathered itself. It seemed larger now, darker, as if it was pulling more of its mass into the room. The damaged tendril had already healed, but it kept its distance from the cat that it was afraid. The thought was so strange that Jisu almost laughed. The void swarm, destroyer of worlds, had found something it feared. And that something was sitting in her biodome, hissing at the darkness like it was a vacuum cleaner that had made too much noise. Biscuit did not understand the situation. He did not know that he was facing an enemy that had ended civilizations. He did not know that every weapon in the galaxy had failed against this creature. He did not know that he should be afraid. All he knew was that something strange and wrong had entered his territory. His human was behind him. His instincts were screaming that this thing was prey. No matter how big it was, cats were predators. They had been predators for 40 million years. Long before humans built cities or ships or weapons, cats were hunting in the shadows. That instinct was written into every cell of Biscuit's body, coded into his genes, impossible to remove. The swarm had conquered species that built things. It had never faced something that simply was. Doyen spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "Can it kill that thing?" Jisoo watched Biscuit. The cat's tail was low and twitching. His eyes never left the swarm. Every part of him was ready for violence. "I do not know," she said honestly. "But I think the swarm does not know either. I think that scares it." The lights flickered again. Somewhere in the station, something collapsed with a distant crash. The swarm's tendrils twitched, reaching toward the walls, toward the ceiling, toward the humans huddled in the corner. But it did not come closer to the cat. Biscuit held his ground. 15 pounds of orange fur and ancient instinct, standing between humanity and the darkness. The war was about to change. The standoff continued. Minutes passed like hours. The swarm spread slowly across the walls and ceiling, surrounding them, but it kept a circle of empty space around Biscuit. The cat had not moved from his position near the center of the room. Jisoo used the time to check on the wounded. Do-yoon was getting worse. His leg had stopped bleeding, but his skin was cold and his eyes kept closing. He needed a hospital. He needed surgery. He needed things that did not exist anymore on this dying station. Yuna worked on him with the medical kit, doing what she could. Minho stood guard, though his rifle was empty now. He had used his last power cell earlier, before they understood that shooting was pointless. While she helped bandage wounds, Jisoo's mind kept working on the problem. Why was the swarm afraid of a cat? The answer seemed simple, but it had deeper layers. She remembered her training. She remembered the classes she took about Earth's history and biology. And she remembered a question that alien species had asked humans for centuries. Why did you keep predators in your homes? It was one of the great mysteries of human behavior. Every other species in the coalition had domesticated animals for practical reasons. The Vandorians kept large beasts for carrying heavy loads. The Krell raised creatures that produced valuable silk. The Morath bred animals that could detect dangerous gases in mines. Humans kept cats. Cats did not carry loads. They did not produce useful materials. They did not detect danger. In fact, cats often caused danger by knocking breakable objects off high surfaces or by attacking their owners. Feet in the middle of the night. Cats demanded food, even though they could hunt on their own. They demanded attention, but only when they wanted it. They shed fur everywhere and vomited on carpets, and sometimes simply stared at walls for no reason that any human could understand. And yet humans loved them. Humans wrote poetry about them. Humans built entire sections of the internet dedicated to pictures and videos of them. Humans crossed oceans and traveled to space and never left their cats behind. The aliens found this insane. They made jokes about it. Humans did not tame cats, the saying went. Cats tamed humans. But they were wrong. Both sides of that joke were wrong. The truth was stranger and more wonderful. Cats had chosen to live with humans. Thousands of years ago, when humans first started farming grain, mice came to eat the grain. And where mice went, cats followed. The cats did not come because humans called them. They came because there was good hunting near human villages. Over time, a partnership formed. Not master and servant. Not owner and pet. A partnership between two species that benefited each other. Humans got protection from pests. Cats got easy access to prey and warm places to sleep. That partnership had never been broken. It had traveled from farms to cities to space stations at the edge of the galaxy. Wherever humans went, cats went with them. Not because humans forced them, but because cats decided to come. Jisoo looked at Biscuit. The cat was still focused on the swarm, still ready to fight. But she knew that if she called his name, his ear would turn toward her. Part of his attention was always on her, always ready to respond if she needed him. That was the nature of the bond between cats and humans. It was not about control. It was about choice. And a cat that chose to protect its human was something far more dangerous than any weapon. Weapons could be taken away. Weapons could be turned off. Weapons could malfunction or run out of power. A cat's loyalty could not be switched off. A cat's hunting instinct could not run out of power. These things were part of the animal at the deepest level. Written into its blood and bones. The swarm could adapt to machines because machines followed rules. But evolution did not follow rules. Evolution was chaos shaped by billions of years of survival. Every cat alive today was the product of countless generations of hunters who had lived long enough to have kittens. The weak ones had died. The slow ones had been eaten. Only the perfect predators remained. Biscuit was the end result of 40 million years of death and survival. His claws were not designed in a laboratory. They were earned through endless generations of hunting. His instincts were not programmed. They were inherited from ancestors who had killed to live. The swarm could not understand this. The swarm came from the void between stars, from empty places where evolution did not exist. It had learned to copy and adapt and consume because those were the only ways to survive in its cold, dead home. But Earth was not cold and dead. Earth was a planet of endless war, where every living thing fought every other living thing for the right to exist. Plants fought for sunlight. Animals fought for food. Predators and prey danced their bloody dance. Across every continent and every ocean, humans came from this world of constant battle. And they had brought their partners with them. Their small, furry, impossible partners who had never stopped being wild, even after thousands of years of living in human homes. A tendril of darkness moved closer. Testing again. Biscuit's growl deepened. The tendril stopped. Minho watched the exchange with wide eyes. "It really is afraid of your cat." "Not afraid," Jisoo said quietly. "Confused. It does not understand what Biscuit is. It cannot find a pattern to learn. And for something like the swarm, that uncertainty might be worse than fear. What do we do?" Yoon asked. "We cannot stay here forever. Do-young needs help." Jisoo knew she was right. The standoff could not last. Eventually, the swarm would decide to attack despite its confusion. Or Biscuit would get tired and lose focus. Or the station would fall apart around them. They needed a plan. They needed to understand exactly what Biscuit could do against this enemy. They needed to know if one small cat could really hurt something that had destroyed entire worlds. There was only one way to find out. Jisoo took a deep breath. She looked at her cat, her friend, her partner from a world of violence and survival. "Biscuit," she said softly. The cat's ear turned toward her, but his eyes stayed on the darkness. "Good boy," she whispered. "It is time to hunt." The swarm attacked without warning. One moment, it was still spreading slowly across the walls. The next moment, a massive tendril erupted from the floor directly under Do-young. The wounded soldier had no time to react. The darkness reached for him like a hungry mouth, ready to swallow him whole. Biscuit was faster. The cat launched himself across the room in a blur of orange fur. He did not think. He did not plan. 40 million years of predator instinct took control of his body, and that instinct knew only one thing: attack. He hit the tendril in midair, all 4 sets of claws extended. His teeth found the darkness and bit down hard. His back legs kicked rapidly, raking deep gouges into the swarm's flesh. The swarm screamed. It was the same sound from before. That terrible vibration that shook the room and made Jisoo's ears ring. But this time, it was louder. This time, there was pain in it. Real pain. The kind of pain that the swarm had not felt in 10,000 years. The tendril thrashed wildly, trying to shake off the small creature that was tearing it apart. Biscuit held on. His claws dug deeper. His teeth ripped away pieces of darkness that dissolved into nothing when they hit the floor. Minho grabbed Do-yeon and pulled him away from the battle. Yuna helped, dragging the wounded man toward the back wall. Jisoo stayed where she was, unable to look away from what was happening. Her cat was fighting a god. And her cat was winning. The swarm pulled back its damaged tendril and sent 2 more at the cat from different directions. Biscuit dodged the first one with a twist of his body that should have been impossible. The second one caught him on the side, sending him tumbling across the floor. Jisoo's heart stopped. Biscuit. The cat rolled once, twice, and came up on his feet. He shook his head briefly, then turned to face the swarm again. His fur was wet with something dark, but he was not hurt. The swarm had touched him, but it had not consumed him. Why not? Jisoo understood suddenly. The swarm consumed by breaking things down at the molecular level. But that process required understanding what you were breaking down. The swarm could consume metal because it understood metal. It could consume weapons because it understood weapons. It did not understand cats. Biscuit's biology was a mystery to it. Earth life was built on patterns that the swarm had never seen before. Different proteins, different cellular structures, different everything. To consume Biscuit, the swarm would first need to learn how Earth life worked. And Biscuit was not giving it time to learn. The cat attacked again. This time, he went straight for the center of the swarm's mass. He ran up a tendril like it was a tree branch, his claws finding grip where there should have been none. The darkness tried to grab him, tried to wrap around him, but he was too fast. He twisted and jumped and slashed, never staying in one place long enough to be caught. Pieces of the swarm fell away wherever he touched. Small pieces at first, then larger ones. The creature was trying to regenerate, trying to heal, but Biscuit was doing damage faster than it could repair. Yuna stared in amazement. How is this possible? He is not using a weapon, Jisoo said. She was crying now, though she did not know when the tears had started. He is the weapon. Every part of him is designed to kill. His claws grow back when they break. His muscles can produce force that is incredible for his size. His reflexes are faster than any machine. He is not fighting the swarm. He is hunting it. And that was the truth. Biscuit did not see an ancient enemy from the void between stars. He saw prey. Big, strange, bad-smelling prey that had entered his territory and threatened his human. His brain had simplified the situation to its most basic elements. This thing needs to die. No fear. No doubt. No hesitation. Just a hunt. The swarm gathered itself for a massive strike. Every tendril in the room pulled back, combining into a single enormous mass of darkness. It was going to crush the cat with sheer volume, overwhelm him with size and weight. Biscuit watched it happen. His tail twitched once, twice. Then he did something that made no sense. He sat down and started, cleaning his paw. The swarm paused. The massive strike it had been preparing seemed to stumble, uncertain. Every species in the galaxy would have been terrified at this moment. Every enemy the swarm had ever faced would have been running or screaming or begging for mercy. This small creature was grooming itself. Jisoo understood what she was seeing. It was not courage. It was not bravery. It was something much simpler and much more terrifying. Biscuit was bored. The fight had been going on for several minutes now. In cat terms, that was a very long hunt. His instincts were starting to tell him that this prey was not worth the effort. He had heard it. He had proven he could hurt it. His territory was defended. Time to take a break. He licked his paw again, then looked up at the swarm as if daring it to try something. The swarm did not try anything. For a long moment, the ancient destroyer of worlds and the small orange cat stared at each other. Then, slowly, the swarm began to pull back. Its tendrils retreated from the walls. The hole in the door sealed itself over. The darkness flowed backward, out of the biodome, away from the impossible creature that had hurt it in ways it did not understand. Minho let out a breath he had been holding. It is leaving. The thing is actually leaving. The swarm pulled back further. Through the window, Jisoo could see it retreating from the entire section of the station. Other pieces of it, spread throughout Meridian, were pulling back too. The hive mind had made a decision. This prey was not worth the cost. Biscuit finished cleaning his paw. He stood up, stretched his back in a perfect arch, and walked over to Jisoo. He rubbed his head against her leg, purring softly. She dropped to her knees and gathered him in her arms. He was warm and soft and slightly damp with whatever fluid the swarm was made of. He smelled terrible. He was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. "Good boy," she whispered into his fur. "Good boy, Biscuit. You saved us." The cat purred louder and butted his head against her chin. Behind them, the void swarm continued its retreat. For the first time in recorded history, it was running away. The rescue ships arrived 6 hours later. By then, the void swarm had retreated completely from Station Meridian. It had pulled back into the darkness between stars, leaving behind a trail of damaged corridors and empty rooms. For the first time in 10,000 years of war, it had abandoned the target before consuming it. The Coalition soldiers who boarded the station expected to find corpses. They expected to collect bodies and record another defeat against an unbeatable enemy. Instead, they found 4 survivors in a biodome full of plants and animals. 3 of them were wounded humans. The 4th was a small orange cat who was sleeping on a pile of dead swarm tissue. Yes, dead. The swarm's body parts, once separated from the main mass, had stopped moving. They had become solid, like dried mud, and crumbled when touched. Scientists would later determine that these were the first confirmed swarm kills in recorded history. Biscuit had created them by accident. He had simply torn pieces off during the fight and left them to die. The news spread across the galaxy within days. An Earth animal had fought the void swarm and won. Not with weapons, not with technology, just with teeth and claws and 40 million years of predator evolution. The Coalition's top military commanders demanded to meet the creature. They expected something fearsome, something large and terrifying. They were not prepared for an orange tabby cat who immediately fell asleep on the conference table and ignored everyone trying to talk to him. Park Jisoo became famous overnight. She was interviewed by news services from 100 different worlds. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. How did your pet defeat an ancient cosmic horror? She tried to explain. She talked about biology and evolution and the nature of predator instincts. She explained that cats were not weapons because weapons could be understood and countered. Cats were something different. Cats were violence in its purest form, unchanged since the first felines hunted in the forests of ancient Earth. Most species did not understand. They could not imagine keeping a predator as a companion. They could not understand why humans would share their homes with creatures that had claws and teeth and the instinct to kill. But they started to pay attention to Earth animals in a new way. Research. Teams traveled to human colonies to study cats, dogs, and other companion animals. They observed how these creatures lived with humans, how they played and fought and hunted even in the safety of homes, where no hunting was necessary. They learned that human pets never stopped being wild. Dogs still protected their families with the same loyalty that their wolf ancestors had used to protect their packs. Cats still stalked and pounced with the same deadly precision that their ancestors had used in the African grasslands. Humans had not made these animals safe. They had simply invited dangerous creatures to live with them and called them family. The Coalition began a new program. Breeding programs for Earth animals. training programs to bring cats and dogs onto military vessels. Some people thought it was foolish. How could tiny animals help in a galactic war? But those people had not seen what Jisoo had seen. They had not watched a 15-pound cat drive back an enemy that had destroyed empires. Kim Do-yoon survived. The rescue team got him to a hospital ship in time. He lost his leg, but he was alive. He credited Biscuit with saving his life and adopted 2 cats of his own when he returned to Earth. Lee Yuna went back to active duty. She requested a transfer to a new experimental unit, the Companion Animal Combat Division. She was one of its first members. Her partner was a large gray cat named Storm, who liked to ride on her shoulder. Choi Min-ho retired from the military. He said he had seen enough war. He opened a small restaurant on Mars and kept 3 cats who terrorized the kitchen and charmed the customers. He never talked about what happened on Station Meridian, but sometimes people noticed him watching his cats with a strange expression of respect. The Void Swarm stayed away from human space for 2 years. When it finally returned, it encountered something new. Defense stations staffed with Earth animals of various kinds. Not just cats, dogs, ferrets, even some birds of prey. The swarm tested these defenses once. It lost. After that, it went elsewhere. The galaxy was large, and there were other species to consume. Species that had not brought tiny predators to the stars with them. Species that were easier to understand and defeat. Humanity and its animal partners were left alone. Jisoo returned to Earth with Biscuit. She received offers from universities and military academies and research institutes across known space. She turned them all down. She was tired. She wanted to go home. Her mother's house was in Bizen, near the ocean. Jisoo sat on the porch in the evening light, watching the sun set over the water. Biscuit lay in her lap, purring softly as she scratched behind his ears. Her mother brought tea and sat beside her. The news channels are still talking about you. They say you are a hero. Jisoo smiled and shook her head. I did not do anything. I just happened to be there. Her mother looked at the cat. Biscuit had one eye half open, watching a bird in a nearby tree. Even now, even relaxed and comfortable, part of him was still tracking potential prey. Still ready to hunt. That little thing? Her mother asked. That is what saved everyone? Jisoo nodded. He did not know he was saving us. He just saw something that threatened his territory. His family. So he chose violence. Is he dangerous? Jisoo thought about the question. She thought about watching Biscuit tear into an ancient nightmare, with claws and teeth that evolution had spent millions of years perfecting. She thought about the sound of the swarm screaming in pain and confusion. Then she looked at the cat in her lap. He was purring louder now, completely relaxed. His paws kneaded gently against her leg. His nose was wet and cold against her hand. Yes, she said finally. He is very dangerous. He is one of the most dangerous things in the universe. She picked him up and held him close. He made a small sound of complaint, then settled against her chest, and he chose to love me anyway. The sun set over the ocean. The stars came out, one by one, filling the sky with distant lights. Somewhere out there, the Void Swarm was moving through the darkness, consuming worlds that had no cats to defend them, but Earth was safe. And in a small house by the sea, a woman held her cat and knew that she would never be alone. Biscuit purred and fell asleep. He dreamed of hunting.